everyone, welcome to our channel.
For today's video, we will discuss about
The Greek city-states,
and we use a book as a reference entitled
History of the World.
The Greek city-states has 3-chapter outline.
First, the Greek civilization begins in the Aegean. Second, the Greek city-states develop. And lastly, the city-states fall to conquerors.
These are the posted questions. For chapter outline number 1,
where did Minoan civilization develop?
For chapter outline number 2, in what ways was it the center of the Greek life?
For chapter outline number 3, how did Greek civilization spread to the Near East?
Now, let's start our discussion. First chapter outline is the Greek civilization begins in the Aegean. As you can see in the picture, the Aegean Sea located is near Sea of Crete and in the Mediterranean Sea. Minoan civilization develops on Crete. Minoan, it is a member of a non-Indo-European people who flourished on the island of Crete during the Bronze Age. People on Crete were working with bronze and gold and developing a system of writing. Their civilization was at its height between 1700 BC when Crete dominated the lands around the Aegean Sea. The Minoans, they are the ones who built magnificent palaces for the house royal families, to the police, and also to the government officials. This picture is the example of the Minoan civilization develops on Crete. The Mycenaean ruled Crete and mainland Greece. Mycenaean, it is an ancient city in Greece. Mycenaean scribes kept their records in a kind of writing that had been borrowed from Crete. This picture is an example of the ancient city in Greece, which is the Mycenaean, and it is the richest and most important town. Greece enters a dark age. Greece enters a dark age that lasted until about 800 BC. Wars were common, and their arts were disrupted. During the early part of the Dark Age, a tribe of Greeks called Dorians moved into the southern part of the peninsula. This picture is an example of Dorians. When we say Dorians, it is a member of Hellenic people speaking the Doric dialect of Greek. Hellenic civilization developed. The great age of a Greek civilization began to take shape. It is known as the Hellenic age from Hellas, the Greek names for the country. Hellenic Greeks inherited skills such as pottery making and metal working, and also they followed some of the same religious practices and told many of the same myths and legends. This picture is an example of the Phoenician alphabet. They used this to write their own language. They also learned the Lydian practice of using coins and gained knowledge of geometry from the Egyptians. Greek myth tells stories of many gods. The most famous of these oracles was the one at Delphi. For advice, they sometimes consulted oracles because they want to know the hints about the future. The Greeks believe in many gods, and they believe that it can help them in their everyday lives. This picture shows the Greek goddesses. Homer's epics tell the story of legendary heroes. One of the most important influence on Greek religion and thought was the poet of Homer. According to tradition, he was a blind poet who lived in Asia Minor. His two great epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, is of works of poetry, not history, and they are both providing insights about the way of life. This picture is the poetry of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Greek and Phoenician colonies. Colonies spread Hellenic culture. The Greek began to establish colony settlements in other lands, and the settlers carried Greek traditions and ways of living to their home, and also they spread the Hellenic culture to many areas of the Mediterranean world.
And now let's move on to our chapter outline number 2. The Greek city-states develop. Athens and Sparta. City-states are independent communities. The polis was the center of Greek community life. When we say polis, it is the center of Greek community life, where people gathered in an open market, pleased to conduct business and discuss politics. Also, they cherished its self-sufficiency and its own way of life.
Sparta trains its men to be fearless warriors.
Spartans established a strong military government to maintain order. Their goal was to produce strong-bodied, fearless people for both men and women. This picture is the example of Spartan warriors. The Athenians valued the development of many abilities. Athens became the commercial and cultural center of Greece. They were proud of their political freedom. Also, they believed that a man's life was empty if he failed to use his mind and develop all his talents. That's why they boasted of their artists, playwrights, poets, and thinkers. The Athenians developed new ideas of government. The Greeks were the first people in history to establish a government in which free citizens ruled themselves. The people of Athens, however, took the lead in the creation of democracy, which comes from a Greek word meaning a rule by the people. It took several countries for Athens to develop into a democracy. Athenian laws are written. Aristocrat the name Draco. Draco, he is the first who written code of laws. Solon makes political reform. Solon also ordered all citizens to teach their sons a skill or trade, and granted Athenian citizenship to artisans from other cities. The nobles owned most of the farmland, and many peasants or farmers were deeply in debt to them. Those who could not pay what they owed lost their land to the nobles, and some even became slaves as a way of paying their debts. Solon made many changes. He canceled the debts of the poor, freed those who had been slaves for debt, and made slavery for debt illegal. Solon's reforms did not completely satisfy either the nobles or the lower classes, but the assembly pledged to abide by them. To improve the farmers' prosperity, Solon encouraged them to grow new crops, like olives for oil and grapes for wine. He is Pisistratus. Pisistratus promotes cultural life. In ancient Greece, the sole ruler of a police was known as a tyrant. Pisistratus had support among both city dwellers and farmers. He gave more land to the farmers and granted them loans to grow more grapes and olives for trade. Pisistratus improved the water supply and built temples and fountains. This is the olive tree. According to the Greek legend, the olive tree was created by the goddess Athena as a part of a competition to see which Olympic deity could give human beings the most useful gift. About 5,000 years, the silver-leaf olive tree has been an important part of life in the countries around the Mediterranean Sea. People prize the olive tree for its beauty and hardiness. Cleisthenes established more democratic practices. Cleisthenes divided Athens into 10 areas called dems. 50 men from each dem served on an advisory council. All male citizens could vote in the assembly whether they own land or not. When we see dems, it is a simple subdivisions of land in the countryside. Their votes were written on a piece of broken pottery called an ostrakon. When we say ostrakon, it is a pottery usually broken off from vase or other earthenware vessel. This picture is the example of the ostrakon. The Persian Wars, a threat by Persia units the Greeks. Sparta had developed in very different ways. The people of the Greek city-states had many things in common. They spoke the same language, believed in the same gods, read and recreated the Homeric epics, and competed in the same athletic contest. The Greeks considered themselves superior to all non-Greeks, whom they called barbarians. When we say barbarians, it refers to uncivilized people or evil people and their evil deeds. This picture is the example of barbarians. The Empire Athens. Yet the Greeks had never been politically united. They were intensely loyal to their own polis. The many city-states were often at the war with one another. Athens sent 20 ships to help the rebels, but they were defeated. The Persians invade Greece again. Persians were unwilling to accept defeat. The invading Persians crossed the waters, the Hellespont, and made their way through mountainous northern Greece. The Greeks defeat the Persians at sea. The terrified Athenians fled to the nearby island of Salamis. The Athenians, however, had built a strong new navy on the advice of their leader Themistocles. The Greek chiefs to other around Salamis. Themistocles tricked the Persians into sealing their fleet into a narrow passage between the island and the mainland, crowded together and getting in each other's way. Victory brings a golden age to Athens. The Persian Wars were a crucial period in history. The center of this development was Athens. This Greek democracy and culture reached their height in a golden age during the half-century after Persians' defeat. The Golden Age of Athenian democracy. To protect themselves, both Sparta and Athens made agreements called alliances with other city-states. The city-states in an alliance agreed to join forces to protect themselves against enemies. Athenian democracy reaches its height. Athens now became the political and cultural center of the Eastern Mediterranean. Athens was so remarkable that the period is often called the Age of Pericles. When we say Age of Pericles, it refers to part of classical age of Greece. Pericles was a firm believer in people's participation in government. Pericles' funeral oration. Pericles said, "The government of Athens is in the hands of the many and not of the few." In the assembly, every citizen was free to say what he thought. The poorest shoemaker had as much right to speak and vote, the richest landowner. The Athenians cherished freedom of speech and thought. The Greek philosopher Plato said that Athens was full of liberty and free speech. Athenians governed themselves directly. The number of Athenian citizens was small enough for them to govern themselves in a direct democracy. They themselves decided whether to sign a trade treaty, build a navy, or make a peace. It was assumed that each Athenian citizen could think intelligently about community affairs. The duties of government were performed by ordinary citizens. The Athenians believed every citizen should take part in the government. The Athenians value education. The Athenians considered education necessary for good citizenship. The Greeks cherished learning. Young Greeks studied singing, dancing, and playing a harp-like instrument called a lyre. This picture is an example of harp-like instrument called a lyre. Many people in Athens are excluded from public life. Greek women did not have the same rights as men because most Greeks agreed with the thinker of Aristotle, who said, "The male is by nature superior and the female inferior, and the one rules and the other is ruled." Athenian women took no part in the public or political life of the city. Greek women received no formal education, although some young women learned to read and write at home. Training in household skill was considered the only education a woman needed. Slaves also could not be citizens. In Athens, as in other parts of the ancient world, slavery was accepted as part of life. Household slaves worked as suitors and servants and were often looked upon as trusted members of the family. Slaves who worked for Greek artisans might in time learn a skill and earn enough to buy their freedom.
And lastly, our chapter outline number 3 is about the city-states fall to conquerors. Athens and Sparta fight the Peloponnesian War. The Peloponnesian War broke out between the two city-states, which is the Athens and the Sparta. Alexander sent the Athenian navy to attack Sparta by sea, but Athens' new leaders made a number of unwise decisions. Sparta continued to win both land and sea battles, and they finally forced Athens to make peace. War weakens the Greek city-state. Peloponnesian War involved many city-states besides Sparta and Athens. The war also brought political unrest. It was a great tragedy for all Greece, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. And the Greek city-states had lost what they loved most, their independence. Alexander became ruler, and he is known to history as Alexander the Great. Alexander of Macedonia established an empire. Alexander is a conqueror, and he acquired military skill, leadership ability, and a deep desire to conquer the Persian Empire. And Alexander's armies conquered the land from Egypt to India without losing a single battle. Alexander's empire breaks apart. None of Alexander's generals was able to control the vast empire, and it broke into 3 separate kingdoms. One general, Ptolemy, ruled Egypt, others ruled in Asia and Macedonia. Greek civilization spreads through the empire. The people of the Near East helped to spread the Greek culture. The Greek language became widely used in the cities of the Mediterranean world. The spread of Greek culture through the lands Alexander had conquered marked the opening of a new stage of civilization called the Hellenistic Age. Here are the check-up questions by chapter outlines. Outline number 1. Where did Minoan civilization develop?
The Minoan civilization developed on the island of Crete. People on Crete were working with bronze and gold and developing system of writing.
To what areas the Greek settlers spread Hellenic culture? Greek settlers spread Hellenic culture in the Mediterranean Sea. Questions for outline number 2. Describe polis. Polis was a typical structure of a community in the ancient Greek world. Second question, in what ways was it the center of the Greek life? People gathered in an open market place to conduct business and discuss politics. How did each of the following contribute to the development of democracy in Athens? Draco contributed the first written code of laws for Athens. Solon made many changes. He made political reforms that increased the power of nobles. He also canceled the debts of the poor, freed those who had been slaves for debt, and made slavery for debt illegal. Cleisthenes contributed to establish more democratic practices. He became head of political party opposed. Check-up questions for outline number 3. What lands did he conquer? Alexander conquered the Persian Empire and land from Egypt to India. How did Greek civilization spread to the Near East? By spreading the Greek culture through the land, and their language became widely used in the cities of the Mediterranean world.
This is your presenter. ni Grace A. Banyes,
Judy Gale E. Fresnillo, from BSED Second Year.
we can do this.
Para sa bayan at sa kinabukasan.
Thank you and God bless.